Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toylist of Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. I'm your host, and today I'm going to continue with our series of 32 teams for the off-season breakdown show. And today's episode, you'll notice I have three special guests on the screen here. Just like with the last show with the Bengals and with all the shows up and coming, I'm a Colts fan. I don't know very much about all these other teams. So instead of me trying to ramble on like I did last offseason, about a team I didn't know as much about and making it boring as hell, I thought I'd have on some experts that know a bit about their team that would be able to give you better information than I can give you. So we'll work our way around the clock here, right here to my right, probably. Yeah, but yep. To my right here, Aaron Freeman from the Locked On Falcons podcast. Aaron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Glad to be talking some Falcons football on somebody else's podcast for once.
Right on. Well, speaking of that, I'm going to forget to give you guys the opportunity to boost up anything you want to talk about at the end of the show. So we may as well do it in the intros. You got anything you're working on coming up that you want to talk about?
No, just daily Monday through Friday podcast on Locked On Falcons, doing the draft breakdowns right now. Just did a Kyle Pitts breakdown, working on a Richie Grant breakdown. Obviously, with the schedule coming out, going to be talking about that. So a lot of topics to talk about on Locked On Falcons, but just your general May sort of post-draft commentary and looking ahead to the upcoming season.
Very good, very good. And I do listen to the show too. Very informative stuff. Make sure you download the podcast. Jamie is next. We got Jamie Byrom from across the pond. He is the host of @Season Long DFS. You can find him also on the Kickers Matter Dynasty podcast. How's it going, Jamie?
Not too bad. Thank you, Justin. Not too bad. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. So I know Jamie through fantasy football, and this show does not have to be fantasy football centric. It's up to you guys. I don't know how deep you guys are into fantasy football, but I know Jamie's deep into it. He runs a lot of leagues, and he got me roped into one or a couple, I think, where I'm donating my money every year. But I appreciate you coming on, Jamie. And then finally we have John Michaels. And for John Michaels, I ran out of my 200 character limit at the bottom of the screen to type up all the stuff that he's involved with. But at the very least, he's a host of a show at 680 The Fan, contributor to just about every other podcast in the Southeast region. And obviously I should have taken off the Falcons sideline reporter. We talked about that before the show, but anyway, John, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Great to be on here. The easiest way to find us, download the 680 The Fan app. You can hear myself, former Falcon wide receiver Brian Finneran, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. Most of the day, we're talking about the Braves or the Falcons or something Hawks related. So always good to come on and talk some dirty birds.
Yeah, and Brian Finneran was kind of a gritty player, actually. So is he the same way in real life?
He's as laid back as they come. He's got your typical California. He's a Southern California, or I guess somewhere Southern California guy. Went to Villanova. He's as laid back as they are, but he's passionate about his Falcons. If you ever follow him on Sunday on social media, Finn is insane. Like last year when we decided not to cover an onside kick, he called our team slow and dumb, and he wasn't wrong. When Todd Gurley fell into the end zone when he was supposed to fall down at the 1 yard line, I think we both said that was one of the dumbest football plays we've ever seen. But that was last year's Falcons. This year, we don't have to have any T-shirt slogans. We don't have to have any rah-rah speeches. We actually have a coach that might come in and do some things, so I'm excited.
There you go. So I tell you what, guys, in all of my infinite wisdom, I decided to start these shows on the day that the NFL was going to break the NFL schedule out, so we'd have something huge to talk about. And I totally didn't even think about the fact that it's 1 p.m. here and they're not breaking it for another 7 hours. So if there is anything about the schedule that you guys want to talk about that you do happen to know that's coming up, that's great. But otherwise, I think the big thing on hand right now, as far as the off season goes, is the draft itself. Were you guys just to get this thing kicked off? Were you guys surprised at all that instead of going with a quarterback with that 104, that they went with the tight end Kyle Pitts?
I would say I was surprised a little, not completely floored by it, but it seemed like the Falcons were going in the direction of potentially taking quarterback and building towards the future there. And with Justin Fields in the local connections, it seemed to make a lot of sense. But then they went with Kyle Pitts, which wasn't a total surprise since there was a lot of reports leading up to the draft that that's the direction they were headed in. But I was a little surprised by that. But I think the Falcons wound up getting the guy that they liked, they preferred. And I think it's a pretty solid move to secure a long-term piece, another long-term piece, I should say, on their offense that they can build around.
I think, as Aaron said, it wasn't massively surprising, seeing as there's a lot going around that the Falcons were stupidly high on Pitts, and at the 4 spot, he was betting wise, he was the favourite to go to the Falcons to pick. I wasn't exactly enamored by the pick personally. I would have preferred to go a different direction, but I'm not in the draft room. I don't make the decisions. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's just going to be interesting to see how they use him, especially in the first year.
For me, not a single bit. I knew probably maybe a month and a half beforehand, they were not going to draft quarterback. You could see the writing on the wall the second they restructured Matt Ryan's contract and they pushed money further down the road. And I get the salary cap, they were up against it. There were 3 or 4 other ways they could have maneuvered some money around. The second they did that, they locked themselves into Matt for 2 more years. And you got to think about it. The NFL is a league that you're not walking in right now and saying, hey, we've got 3-4 years to rebuild. Unless maybe you're Brian Flores down in Miami. It's you better win today, or a year or 2 from now, you may not have a job anymore. And I think Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot realized we got to get a guy at number 4 that can walk in and play. As much as I don't like the University of Florida, that's very well chronicled for anybody that knows me. Matter of fact, I can't stand the University of Florida as a University of Miami guy. Kyle Pitts is the best guy I saw in college football, and that may include Trevor Lawrence. That dude was unguardable. If he could walk into the Falcons right now and give you 7-8 touchdowns in year 1, number 1, and Arthur Smith, who loves to use 2 tight ends, can get things done, I think you've got a great player, and you set yourself up for whenever the Julio Jones era comes to an end, you have another unguardable player on your offense.
Hey, and not for nothing, for fantasy football purposes, for those of you that play fantasy, because, toilets and titles, we are fantasy centric. That's kind of a cheat code for your tight end position right there, to have a wide receiver playing in that position.
The only thing I'll say with that, and I went back and did a bunch of research on rookie tight ends around the NFL, whether it's Travis Kelce, George Kittle, you could go all the way back to Rob Gronkowski and some of the other first rounders. The average is about 38 catches, 430 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, the anomaly, I want to say it was Kelce, who didn't play as a rookie but played his second year. He had about 70 grabs and 800 yards. Go way back to Jeremy Shockey, who had about 75 catches and 800 yards for the Giants. But there's been some other guys that are going to give you literally, 10 catches and 100 yards. I'm hoping Kyle Pitts is on the high side of the average, 50-plus catches, over 500 yards. And the big thing for the Falcons is going to be the red zone.
I agree with John on that. I think the red zone is really where Kyle Pitts has a golden opportunity to shine. With you look at how Arthur Smith really utilized the tight end position, particularly in the red zone in Tennessee, with I think 40% of their red zone targets being towards the tight end. You compare that to the Falcons last year with Hayden Hurst and their other tight ends, it was about 20-30%. So you're going to see a significant uptick in targets in the red zone. And that was arguably, besides the running game, the biggest weakness of the Falcons offense last year. And I think the Falcons are going to rely pretty heavily on their offense, as they say, outscoring other teams. But basically, they're going to basically try to put as many points up as possible this upcoming season. I think the schedule kind of pushes them in that direction. They're facing a lot of teams that don't necessarily have high-level offenses outside of a handful like Buffalo and Tampa Bay this year, but they're facing a lot of pretty solid defenses, Washington being one of those teams, Philadelphia being one of those teams, Miami being one of those teams. So I think they're going to have to be able to put up a lot of points this year if they're going to want to win games against some of these defensive-oriented teams. And I think they have the opportunity to do that with the selection of Kyle Pitts, and particularly if he can provide that big bump in the red zone, which I think he is going to do.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, the best organizations aren't going to necessarily draft for need anyway. But honestly, the Falcons did kind of need a tight end too. So it kind of fit both, drafting for need and drafting for the best available at that time. So I mean, overall, I really like the pick. It's just that I know that there were a lot of people out there that were talking about quarterback. It's kind of the only reason I mentioned it. But while I got you guys on here, another big thing that's kind of interested me is Julio Jones at this stage in his career. I mean, is there any chance at all that he's not a Falcon come week 1?
I would say there's a chance. I hope it's not a high chance, but it seems to be that there are plenty of reports that say there is, where there's smoke, there is some fire there. So we'll just have to sort of wait and see at this point in time. But if Julio is around in this year, my expectation is that this will probably be his final year in Atlanta. It just seems like there's too much smoke that says that the Falcons are going to suddenly recommit long-term to Julio Jones being on the team, particularly with the addition of Kyle Pitts, with the fact that Calvin Ridley is going to be entering his 5th year next season, and the Falcons will probably want to extend him. And it doesn't make a ton of sense, given how cash-strapped the Falcons are, that they're going to pay a lot of money to Calvin Ridley, a lot of money to Kyle Pitts, and then on top of that, pay a lot of money to Julio Jones. It seems like something's got to give there, and you're probably not getting rid of Calvin Ridley or Kyle Pitts. So I think that's probably going to lead to the Falcons moving on from Julio Jones. But I personally would love to see an offense featuring Julio Jones, Kyle Pitts, and Calvin Ridley this season, along with other players like Hayden Hurst and Mike Davis, to see sort of how good this offense can potentially be with Arthur Smith calling plays.
Yeah, very good. But were you going to say something, Jamie?
I was just going to say, I think it would be a shame. Everyone wants, in a perfect world, Julio Jones stays with the Falcons. Brilliant. But money talks, isn't it? The cap for us it's not good. But as Aaron said, you kind of want to see what the offense is going to be like with a Julio, with a Calvin, with a Kyle Pitts, with Matt Ryan, with Hayden Hurst. It's legitimately could be one of the best offenses in the league. And I think, obviously, the restructuring of Matt Ryan, saying we've got him for another couple of years with restructuring the contract, and then just getting rid of Julio Jones at the same time, it doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of like, well, we're kind of saying we're not all in, but we're not drafting quarterback. We're going with Matt Ryan for the next couple of years. It's the best opportunity, but we're going to get rid of one of the best receivers in the league when healthy. Right. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, not for nothing, but Mike Davis is actually, I think you can add him in that mix too. I think he's a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for.
He's a solid running back. I think it's going to be more by committee this year. But to go back to Julio, I guess I'm a glass half full kind of guy when it comes to this. I guess, I spend so much time every morning trying to figure out the cap. And trust me, I don't know the cap in full. I read Spotrac or Spotrac like everybody else does. But if you really do deep dives into this, the first part is they believe the salary cap is going to go back up $25-30 million next year. So you're really just trying to fix this year, knowing that next year, because the pandemic is mostly over, you're going to have fans back in the stands. The NFL is going to sign a multi-billion-dollar television deal, Amazon Prime being a big part of this. You're going to have some flexibility moving forward to make things happen. There's also about 4 or 5 different moves they can get done this year. And number one is Grady Jarrett. If you want to extend somebody, you extend Grady Jarrett, you take his base salary this year, and you move it into a bonus 2 or 3 years from now. Grady's young enough and good enough where you figure, hey, I'd be really happy if the Falcons extended him 5 more years. You take the 2 that you have, you add 3 on top of that, you lock in Grady Jarrett for 5 more years, and you feel pretty good about it. I think that's what's going to happen. There's guys you can cut on this football team. I'm sorry, Deidre Sanat's been on a milk carton for 2.5 years. You can take his $1.5 million that he's owed and say bye-bye. That's $1.5 million you could save. I think his dead money's about $200,000. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's not much. I think they floated that Julio stuff just to see would somebody bite. And the big part about this with Julio, you have to find somebody that now is willing to take on $20 million some odd dollars in salary cap. Granted, the Falcons would pay 7 this year, and they'd pay 15 of it next year before all of his dead money goes away, and then give you assets. And I don't see Terry Fontenot going, all right, I'm going to trade Julio for a bag of beans and rice. He's going to want first-round picks and maybe young, cheap talent. For that way, Aaron, right. I think we're going to get our wish. I think you're going to see an offense at minimum for 1 year with Julio and Kyle and all of these other guys.
Yeah, and I think to add on to John's point, and he brings up a good point. Like the Falcons will have options after this season, and one of those options could be keeping Julio Jones. They'll just have to maneuver money, and I think it will make a lot more sense for them to maneuver that money and as they say, kick the can down the road. And as far as their salary cap goes, if they're very successful this year, if they make the playoffs and they make a deep run, it's going to feel a lot easier for them to then basically say, okay, well, let's keep the band together for one more year and let's see whether or not we can push this even further into January and possibly even be playing games in February. But if they aren't able to achieve that, then they're going to have to figure out, revisit the whole salary cap situation and be in a similar probably situation as they were entering this offseason, hopefully not coming off a 4-12 season. But I think, a lot of what this team's future is going to be will kind of be heavily dependent on how well they perform this year. And it goes to the points that John and Jamie have said. It makes the most sense to try to maximize how good a team you can be this year. And it's hard to imagine how they can do that without Julio Jones on the roster.
Hey, you think about it. There might be 3 guys on defense that we really feel comfortable about. Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones, and A.J. Terrell. That's it. Dante Fowler, I hope he can revert back to L.A. Rams form. But outside of that, we're really hoping that new defensive coordinator Dean Pease can come in and make a difference, that he can take this defense from 28th to, 15th just by scheme. If they're 15th, this is a playoff team, period. I'll put all $9 I have in my bank account right now that they will be a playoff team if this is the 15th or better defense in the league. Matt Ryan, I believe, since 2008 has had 3 top 15 defenses ever. One of them was in 2017, the year after we went to the Super Bowl. It was a top 10 defense. I think you have to go all the way back to 2012 when they go to the NFC Championship game, and it may have been in 2010 when they go 13-3. Every year after that, he's had a mediocre defense. So why not put the chips on the offensive side of the table, go score 30 a game, which you should have anyway, and go win a bunch of football games?
I've got a friend of mine who's a Titans fan, and he's got nothing but praise and love for Dean Pease. And as soon as Pease joined the Falcons, I got a message on Twitter and a text message just saying, boy, you guys are lucky. He will turn the defense around. And as you say, if he can turn it to a top 15 defense, brilliant. Fantastic. But yeah, I think it's a definite upgrade on the defense, and it's all going to be offense, as Aaron's mentioned. I think John as well. It's going to be, we're going to try and score more points than you will. You score 30, we'll try and score 35.
I just want to hear you say 30 and 35 a bunch more times. I'm not the only one thinking. You've got the best accent going. We went to London. I was lucky enough doing sidelines to be able to go with them to London back in 2014. I just wanted to listen to people talk. I know the people overseas, they look at us and go, oh, we love your accents. I'm like, we sound like idiots most of the time. You guys sound awesome.
I would say the same for you guys. I can see Wembley Stadium from the top of my road. So I'm about 7 miles from London. I'm South London. But yeah, it's, to me, our accent's just a bit boring. It's just very plain. Everyone else's, your guys, it's something different to it. But I think that's kind of how everybody sees everyone else's accents.
Yeah, we were lucky enough. We stayed at the hotel right across the street from Wembley Stadium. So I was there from Wednesday through Sunday and was just amazed. Getting on the tube, going down to London. We found some pub, me and some people from the Falcons. We also realized that a taxi ride when the tube closes at midnight is not cheap. From downtown London, I think we paid $250 American to get back to the hotel. It was about 2:30 in the morning. We were 3/4 tanked, and we had a day to recover. But what an awesome trip! By the way, if we want to mention the schedule briefly, the Falcons October 10th will be in London taking on the New York Jets. So that'll be an awesome time for the team to go over there and try to pick up a nice, easy win. They're going to beat the hell out of the Jets. Zach Wilson, he's going to be the worst quarterback in this draft.
It's going to be a rough season if the Falcons, get lit up by the Jets. It's going to be a very rough season if we see that happening.
I'm going to be a miserable man at 6 a.m. if we lose to the Jets.
I'm just hoping. I went to the Falcons Lions when the first time the Falcons came over. I got it was a birthday present by my other half. She surprised me for when we went there. And that was the last second field goal retaken, I believe it was, for the Detroit Lions when we were 17 or 20 up or something?
Blown lead by the Falcons? Oh,
Yeah.
Still a surprise.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
21-0 was the lead. And again, I got to travel, so I'm on the field for that game. We all thought Mike Smith was getting fired on the tarmac when we got back from London. We landed back in Atlanta probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning Atlanta time. And Mike Smith was just off to the side, and we're going, dude, he is getting fired. We just blew a 21-0, and they gave him to the end of the year. Arthur Blanks is loyal like that, but yeah, that was a miserable trip. 21-0. Matt Ryan threw the worst interception I've ever seen him throw.
Worst throw I've ever seen.
Oh,
worst throw I've ever seen.
I'll be honest, it was a dubious penalty on the field goal as well.
Yeah, that was pretty terrible as well.
So I brought you guys all on here to talk good things about your team. It's kind of depressing.
We enjoy the pain.
Yeah, you get 3 Falcon fans in the room. It's not going to end positively. I can tell you that.
I wasn't expecting this kind of talk until I got to the Lions.
Yeah. Here's what we're not going to talk about. We're not going to talk about the game that happened in Houston. That's one of the few times in my life I've cried. Literally cried on a football field. I was miserable, and then I had to come home. My wife, God bless her, beautiful woman. She's a Saints fan. So I've had to live with that for 4+ years.
Ouch. All right. Hey, guys, I think we have time for one more thing, just real quick. I want to know, in your minds, what is going to equal a successful season for the Falcons, and what would be considered a bad season for the Falcons at this point for this up-and-coming season?
I would say a successful year would be making the playoffs and showing everyone what they thought last year, which was the reason why the Falcons were as bad as they were was because of how poorly they were coached. And that if you institute a good coach, a good head coach in Arthur Smith, good play calling with Arthur Smith and Dean Pease calling things on defense, that was a team that at least in theory a year ago could have been in the playoff mix late in the season. And now with a softer schedule, should be definitely, at the front of the line competing for a wild card spot in the NFC. I think that's a successful season. A not successful season, I would say, is another sub 500 season where we look at it with the softer schedule, with some allegedly improved coaching, and we still see some of the same issues that the Falcons were plagued with last year with the inconsistency, poor defensive play, inconsistency on offense, struggling in the red zone. So I would say, if we were putting like a win-loss record on it, I would say, anything above 500 is a successful season. 9-8 now that we're at 17 games. And anything, I would say like 8-9 would be okay, but probably about normal. 7 wins or less, I would feel would probably be unsuccessful in my eyes.
I'm pretty much the same as what Aaron just said. I think if we can get into the wild card, brilliant. I think that will be good. I'll be very, very happy with that. My expectations aren't as high kind of as they previously have been. I think this sub 500 it will be tough to take, but I think if we can get somewhere near the wildcard round, I'll be very happy.
For me, I've already said on record they're going to win 11 games and they're going to the playoffs. I think this offense is that good. When you have 7 games a year ago or 8 games a year ago that you lose by 7 points or less, and I could go down 4 games that literally you just handed away in the last seconds of the game. You played Tampa great the last 2 out of the last 3 weeks. You lost to that stupid fullback that New Orleans had starting at quarterback. I look at you've got a softer schedule. You're playing one of the worst schedules in the league. New Orleans is down. Carolina's still rebuilding. Tampa's going to go back to the Super Bowl, so you're not going to get there. But because of that, you should just by not playing dumb football win 10 or 11 games. That's successful to me. Get to the playoffs, and again, being around this game as long as I have, you get there, all bets are off come January. You get one Saturday or Sunday in January to play a game, you got a chance to win. And I just want that at bat on a Saturday or a Sunday in the NFL. Bad to me is going to be Matt Ryan sacked 45 plus times again, a running game that's absolutely putrid, and Julio Jones playing for the Baltimore Ravens. Those things happen. I'm going to be a miserable soul come football Sundays upcoming this year. So none of that needs to happen. I need Matt Ryan upright, throwing for 5,000 yards. I need Julio Jones wearing 11 in black and red and winning us 10 or 11 games.
Fair enough. All great answers. I tell you what, guys, you guys coming on here proved exactly what I was trying to prove, and that is that you guys are much better at talking Falcons football than I ever could be. So I appreciate your time. I really appreciate your dedication to your team. Good luck to you guys, and good luck to the Falcons this season. Real quick on our way out, don't forget to check out these guys on all of their social media platforms. I'm going to pop them up here real quick so you can pause it as needed. But again, Aaron, John, Jamie, I really appreciate you guys coming on. And if you three could just stick around for just a quick second, I'm going to sign out here. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks a lot.